that starts from as early as the criteria you set for yourself when choosing a husband or wife. And then your behavior during the marital evening. Things that you say during that moment. Things that you say and do when conception begins. A behavior and a frame of mind when you've delivered the child. An adhan that you give in the ear of the child. How you name the child. And this was all to give you a sample of just how late some of us have left it. If we come to the shaykh or the Muslim counselor complaining when the child is 18, 19 years old, saying they're disobedient, they are largely disinterested in Islam. Sometimes, no doubt, this is outside of the control of a person. Tawfiq, hidayah, guidance, is the possession of Allah Almighty. But sometimes this is due to our neglect and not understanding the proper mechanisms in place required for the reception of a Muslim child. And so it would turn out in the case of some that we had shown undutifulness to our children before they showed it towards us as parents. So now let us get into the thick of things. I am going to suggest that there are 3 types of parenting. And I would claim that most of us as parents will fall within one of these 3 categories. The first and the second are non-ideal, and the third is where we want to be. The following information I share with you, I don't claim is my own research. This is largely the works of a Moroccan Murabbi specialist by the name of Dr. Mustafa Abu Saad. If you have access to the Arabic language, I suggest you consume as much of his content as you can. Most of it, inshallah ta'ala, is highly useful. The first type of parent, and as you hear this, ask yourself the question where you fit into this. Or if you're not a parent already, which one will you fit in? And believe me, it will happen a lot sooner than you think. The first type of parent is al-itfa'i. Al-itfa'i, how do we translate this, brothers? Firefighter. The firefighting parent. A firefighter has a responsibility of spending most of his time in the station. Most of his working hours will be in a room, eating biscuits, drinking coffee, watching TV, just waiting for the alarm to go off to make his way to a fire, put it out. When he puts out the fire, his job is done. He comes back to the station and he kicks back and relaxes and he waits for the next call. Some parents are like this, firefighting parents. Meaning, he or she is or are waiting for a problem to occur with the children to then involve themselves, sort it out, and then withdraw. And I would claim that it's very easy to discover a firefighting parent just by way of his or her questions that they ask the sheikh or the mentor or the counselor. The questions of a firefighting parent are very obvious. Their questions are like this: my son is rude. How do I stop him from being rude? My daughter is abusive to her siblings. How do I stop her from being abusive? My child breaks things. How do I stop him from doing that? So most of these questions, as you have heard, are focused on the idea of there being a problem and we need to solve it. There is a break, we're trying to fix it. There is a fire, we're trying to extinguish it. This is the firefighting parent. And what is quite sad is that some parents, and admittedly perhaps more often than not fathers as opposed to mothers, will actually take pride in being a firefighting parent. And he will say, yeah, I am. I have handed over the nurturing of our children to the wife. It is her responsibility. I'm bringing the bread, I'm bringing the milk, I'm paying the rent. I'm not going to get involved with those little kids until they become teenagers. And if she needs help because one of them is going a little bit AWOL, I will get involved, sort out the issue, then I hand over back to her. For him, this is somehow a token of honor. This is somehow something to take pride in. I don't get involved in the nitty-gritties of the family. No, only when there's an issue. That's when they call me in. The issue is that a lot of people who think like this, they are actually transposing ideas that they have studied in other courses, say in management or leadership, and they're superimposing it on the family. And that crossover doesn't always work. It creates dysfunctionality. A person who says this as a father will more often than not have attended a course in leadership and management, and they talk about the difference between a leader and a manager. Have you heard this before? The leader being higher than the manager. The leader is the visionary, and he works on the business. The manager is beneath the leader, and he works in the business. So he says, I'm a father. He brings the concept into family. So I am the leader, I work on the family. And wife, she is the manager, so she works in the family. That type of transfer is not seamless, and it's not accurate, and it doesn't work in family life. So this is the first type of a parent, the firefighting parent, who is looking for a problem, and then he involves himself, and then he withdraws. Dr. Mustafa Abu Sa'd, the one who I cited earlier, the Moroccan Murabbi meaning the specialist in the field of nurturing children or people, he says that on a daily basis I receive around 5,000 emails from parents asking me various questions about their children, how to raise them. And he admits that it's impossible to respond to all 5,000. So he said one day what I decided to do was to do a quick funneling and categorization of these emails. And he said that 75% of those emails are questions posed by firefighting parents. Problem, how do I fix it? Abusive, how do I change it? Breaking things, how do I tell them to stop? He said 75% of those 5,000 are like this. He said 24% is of the second type of parenting, which is the Tayma, al-Murawwid. We're going to get to this in a moment. And only 1% has category number 3, which is al-Ijabi, the positive parent, and we're going to get to this as well. So this is category number 1, the firefighting parent. I think we're all guilty of this to some extent. The second type of parent is al-Murawwid. Al-Murawwid we can translate as, what did I say earlier? The Tayma. What is a Tayma? If you don't really appreciate the accent, T-A-M-E-R, the Tayma. What is a Tayma?
Calm it down.
To calm it down. Yeah. A Tayma, exactly, is the name of an animal trainer. And his job, as you said, Keba, is to train an animal to transfer that thing from being wild and savage to an animal that is domesticated, calm, docile if you wish, castrated if you wish. That's the job of a Tayma. Some parents assume a similar role with their children. Their understanding of successful tarbiyah, nurturing of children, and their definition of success is when I get my daughter or son to do exactly as they are told. When I tame them, I train them, I domesticate them to a level where they no longer say to me, no. When I extract from them any type of stubbornness, and they do exactly as they are told every single time. I say stand up, they stand up. I say jump, they say how high. No back chat, no resistance, they do as they're told. And as I mentioned, for some parents, this is a metric of success. MashaAllah, my son does as he's told. And we celebrate this. We say, Alhamdulillah, my child never bats an eyelid when I ask something. My child has never answered me back. My child essentially has no no personality of his own. This, my brother, my sister, may seem to be success in the early years of the child. Why? Because it gives you peace of mind as mom and dad. No hardship. صح ولا لا? They do as they're told. Sit down, stand up, stand up. But here's the issue. That child is, whether you realize it or not, a ticking time bomb. They will explode or implode sooner or later. You don't see it now because he's a kid. Why? Because you are only able to tame a child in this way only after you have first crushed his self-esteem. You want to make sure that they obey you unconditionally. The child resists because that's his fitrah. That's the way Allah created this. He resists. She pushes back. No, mom, but this, but what about this? They ask, and you don't want it. You just want them to walk straight like this every single time. Eventually, the child stops putting up a fight, and they become how you want them to be, tamed. And they do as they are told every single time. But here's the issue. The rule says that he or she who obeys you unconditionally will now obey anybody else unconditionally. Because you as a parent have uninstalled from them that software that says, I have a mind of my own. You've crushed that idea of esteem and autonomy and independent thinking. So now this is a child that requires so much sheltering and protection. That's why I describe this tamed child as a ticking time bomb. Because for the rest of his or her life, because of our doing as parents, that kid is going to require an immense amount of protection and sheltering. Because he or she will crumble in front of any challenge in life that they are posed with, because you are not there to rescue them. Why? Because you've removed from them that ability to say, no, I think for myself. So, if your child has an element of stubbornness, don't think that this is something that you need to necessarily erase from them. No, stubbornness is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I agree, it is annoying for us as parents. It is frustrating when you got to say the same thing 10 times as opposed to once. It's annoying when your child seems to have opinions, they're a little bit too big for their boots. And it's like, what? You have an opinion now as well, and you're challenging me? There's like 30-year gap between us. No, that stubbornness that they are exhibiting is what will protect them in the future. So that when a deviant comes to them, or somebody with an extreme thought, whether in religion, whether in politics, or whether in sexuality, the child does not cave in every single time. No, they say, no. No. Not just because it is haram, but because I don't want to. So many kids can't do that because they're so afraid of rocking the boat. They're so afraid of upsetting anyone, because back when they were still children, their parents had tamed them, and they removed from them their ability to say no and to think for their own. And I always lament, wallahi, I grieve over that parent who sits in a gathering so smug, so proud that his kid there next to him sat like an idol, still, no movement. And all of the other parents are looking in awe. How did you achieve that? MashaAllah. No movement, no breathing. Is he even alive? Does he speak? Is this success? It looks like success for now, because he's not going to humiliate you in front of your guests. But come the teenage years, you can't bat an eyelid. You can't keep your eye off him for a single second, because any breeze can knock him off and anybody can take him or her away. So this is category number what? 2. This is the al-murawwid, the taming parent. Parenting style number 3. This really is where we would like to be. This is al-murabbi al-ijabi, the positive parent, the positive nurturing mother and father. What are the signs of a positive parent? They have 3 signs. You can measure yourself against them. The first is that there is a mutual sense of admiration between parent and child. The parent admires the child. And perhaps more importantly, the child admires the parent. Your ultimate goal as a righteous man and a righteous woman, parent, is for your child to imitate you, especially when they're young. You want them to imitate you. You don't want them to just do what you say. You want them to act upon what you do. You want to be seen as a role model. Take this as a rule in life. There can only be imitation if it is preceded with admiration. You only imitate one who you admire. That's when you're willing to follow them and take them as a model in life. That's why the companions were so keen to model, to imitate everything of the Prophet ﷺ, down to his beard and his dress and his character and how he walked and talked and ate and slept, because they admired everything about him. So the first sign that there is a positive parent involved here is that the child looks at you with the eye of admiration. Does not look at anybody beyond you. The second sign of a positive parent is that al-murabbi al-ijabi, the murabbi who is positive, treats the underlying causes of a problem as opposed to just treating the surface level symptoms. So you look at some of the solutions that are given to parents with problems and you realize they really lack a lot of detail and nuance. My child does this, do that. My child does not do this, okay, do that. A parent who is positive, who is proactive, is one who will look at the underlying causes of this negative behavior, because they realize that negative behaviors are usually expressions of something deeper at play. So take a child, for example, who is angry or violent or abusive or foul in their talk. The average parent will deal with these issues individually in isolation as symptoms, but they will not get to the root of why they are behaving like that. And so what ends up happening, because you are dealing with the symptom, the child just channels this problem into a different manifestation because you haven't dealt with the root issue. I'll give you an example to make it clear. A child who has problems with rage, anger, always full of fury. And so they go and they hit their siblings. What is the problem here? Is it the hitting of the siblings or is it the rage? Which one is it? Which one is causing the other? It's the rage that is causing the hitting. So if I go and I treat the hitting and I stop him from hitting, and yes, sometimes intervention is needed, but I restrain him without dealing with the underlying issue, he will just channel that rage down a different path. It won't take the form of hitting something else, depending on whether his or her personality is strong or weak. If their personality is strong, they're just going to hit something else, even if it's just a wall. If the personality of the child is weak, that rage has to take a different path, so it goes down the idea of nail biting. Some kids, they do this, or they start stammering in their speech, they start stuttering, or they pull out their hair, or they relieve themselves on themselves. What is this? That's just the rage that you have suppressed, but it's now finding a different channel to express itself in, because the underlying cause was not dealt with. So al-murabbi al-ijabi, the positive parent, is he or she who tries to not deal merely with the symptoms, but they look at the underlying causes to see why my child is behaving like this. Doctors, they do this all of the time. A patient may come to a doctor, to local GP, and say, Dr. Salman, I have pain in the nape of my neck. I have tightness in my chest. I am struggling to breathe sometimes. I have lower back pains. And I have gastroenterological issues. The doctor could give you a medication for each one of those symptoms in isolation. Or he may look at the underlying cause of these pains. And he says, these are signs that you are stressed. Maybe you are overworked. So I suggest you minimize your working hours. I suggest you spend 30 minutes a day walking in the park. And I suggest you spend some more time with family. That way, in some cases, less medication is required because you have dealt with the underlying cause as opposed to treating these symptoms in isolation. So what are the signs of the positive parent? What was number one, ya mashayikh? What is it? Mutual admiration. Yeah? What was number two? You treat the underlying issues. The third one. The third sign of a positive parent is that they make the nurturing and the development of dignity, karama, honor in the heart of the child of paramount importance. It is a priority for the positive parent that my child is raised in an honored and dignified way. What is the use of a child who is praying 5 times a day and is reciting Quran flawlessly, perhaps has memorized it from a young age? What is the use of that child if they don't grow up with a sense of honor and dignity as a Muslim and of course as a human being? What is the use of raising a child and eventually they do follow a career of being a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, or the fourth option in the Arab world, a failure? These are your 4 options in life. What are the use of these things? A practicing Muslim child, which is our ultimate goal, a hereafter-centric child, and somebody who is successful in his career. What use is that if they are so weak in their personality that any breeze topples them? And that's why when you look at the Khawarij, those who fought Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, they did not lack in worship. In fact, their foreheads looked like the knees of camels because their prostration was so long. They would recite Quran without mistake. And he said to the companions sallallahu alayhi wasallam that their worship is so intense, so amazing, that you, O my companions, the best of all people, you will belittle your salah in comparison to their salah, and you belittle your Quran in comparison to their Quran. Yet he described them as being the dogs of hellfire. What went wrong? Weak personalities. All of the outward forms of worship seemed to be in place, no doubt. And some of them were brave. Some of them were chivalrous, courageous, no doubt. They really believed in their cause. But what was their issue? Of the many, it was personalities that were not necessarily strong and honored and dignified. So any wind, any deviance, any bid'ah, any innovation could take them to a different path. So the positive parent, trait number 3, makes it of paramount importance that my son and my daughter will be dignified, will be honored. And that is why, subhanallah al-azim, when you look at Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, when he was taken into the care of Al-Aziz, the Aziz of Egypt, an authority in the land, what was the advice that he gave his wife as per how she is to raise Prophet Yusuf in this palace? What was the advice, my brothers? Omar? Qul? Yeah. He said to her one thing, bas. Not 4 long lectures of me blabbing on. May Allah forgive me. He gave her one bit of advice. He said, Akrimi mathwahu. Make his stay with us honored and dignified. That's it. It's as if he knew that the basis of good tarbiyah, of fine nurturing, is to raise this child upon principles of honor and dignity and self-respect. And that if he grows in this way, he will know how to make the right and wise decisions when he becomes an adult, and he will be fit to take my place in Egypt. He said to her, Akrimi mathwah, make his stay with us honored and dignified. Now, having said this, we've understood the 3 parenting styles of the, what was the first? The firefighter, and then the taima, and then the third is the positive.